Why are we acting so weak? Why is the Biden administration leaving the border wide open? What is wrong with these people? How do you protect the people you care about? Do you just let everyone in? I'm wondering, do you just open your doors and say, you know what? We're going to trust humanity. The doors are wide open. Come on in. I've got a couch. I've got some blankets. The fridge has some food. Mind you, don't eat everything that is in the to-go boxes at my house right now because we're doing construction and some of the kids just decide to leave food in there way beyond their expiration date. So just watch out for that. I have to go through the fridge. I have to throw everything out. But do you just let people in the house and say, welcome to my humble abode, mi casa, su casa, welcome. Let me just lock my children down in the room in case the person that walks in happens to be a bad guy, right? Let's just think of logic here. No, you don't. You don't. In fact, at my house, we've got guns. Yes, we do. We've got weapons. I'm learning how to shoot. I'm so excited. I'm always down at the range now. I belong to a gun range and I go down there and my husband, yes, he does. He trains me on how to shoot and I'm getting pretty good. I am getting really good. One of these days I'm going to do it right here on the podcast. I'm going to take you down to the gun range with me. But we don't just open our homes up to strangers. Some of you live in HOAs. Some of you have walls around your home. Nancy Pelosi, I'm sure. President Barack Obama. Yes, big walls around your house over in Martha's Vineyard. You all want to protect your families. I don't blame you. So why is it that the leftists and these radicals and these foreigners getting involved in our own policy, national policy, want to badmouth President Trump for the great job he did in attempting to protect our country from the outside, which he did? Badmouth him and then just have this policy under Biden, which is wide open borders. Why do they want that? What is behind that? And on today's show, I'm going to be sharing an article with you that I mean, to me, it was published. Okay, it was published in Axios a few days ago. I figure it is a leftist leaning article that is not happy with what Trump's immigration policy will be should he become president, should he become 47. It just makes me support him all the way, even more. But first, Allegiance Gold. Gold and silver allow you to protect what you've worked so hard for, and it gives you back the control and the privacy that you need. And because reputation is very important to me, the only company that I recommend, guess what, is Allegiance Gold. You don't want your money all in one spot. You saw what happened in Canada. You see what happens in the United States with these woke corporations, with woke banks. We don't even know what's going to happen in the next year. The stock market's already showing signs of instability. Diversify, diversify, diversify. That is what you need to do. And you can do that now by getting $5,000 of free silver. Listen to this, on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. Get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them Sara sent you. That's SARA. Don't wait. Call or click today. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA. SARA, no H. Or go to protectwithsara.com. We can't control the Biden administration, folks. We know that. But we can prepare. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702. Or go to protectwithsara.com. The article is titled Scoop: Inside Trump's New Plan to Limit Immigration. And we're going to break this down. Apparently, they have an inside scoop, but they don't want to tell you what or who the scoop is. They just want to say inside scoop, a source. And it's probably true. I mean, there probably was a source that said, you know, this is what Trump plans on doing. But, you know, when I was a journalist, and we'll go into that in more detail, I would have to give 3 sources of which they didn't know each other. They weren't like back-to-back sources. They were sources that were able to verify a document, those sources more than likely never knew each other or knew of the document that the one person would know of that document. That's how I always worked it. So that I would know when I got information or I was trying to verify a document that information was accurate. And this is the proposal that the Trump administration has for immigration. Let's go through it. In the story, former President Trump wants unprecedented restrictions on immigration and the border if he's elected in 2024. Thank you. Yes, unprecedented. Yes, we need to get there because right now we have unprecedented open borders. And you all know that because I stand on the border and I've been reporting to you for years and showing you thousands and hundreds of people just coming across the border with no background checks, by the way, coming not through the ports of entry, which are required by law, but in between the ports of entry, crossing the Rio Grande River, putting their children's and their lives in danger, coming across in the worst heat and the worst conditions, and putting everyone's life in danger, even our own law enforcement officials who are working down there. We know that the drug cartels and the human traffickers are the middlemen in this process. So thank you, President Trump, for wanting to propose a border patrol policy that is filled with restrictions on immigration. Yes, and the border and immigration are two different things. So we're going to go into that in detail as well, such as screening prospective immigrants for Marxist ideologies. Yes, why should they be here? This is the land of the free. I don't need the Marxists, more leftist Marxists that want to overthrow our government. We don't need that. John Brennan, remember John Brennan, head of the CIA? He was a registered member of the Marxist Party. He was a registered communist in the United States when he was younger. And then he tells the CIA during his screening, and then he flaunts it in our face, flaunts it right in our face and says, you know what? Yeah, I was a communist when I was younger. And that was before I joined the CIA. And then I saw the light. That's just such BS. You were communist in college. And then you went to the CIA and look what you did. You made life miserable for a nation by lying about a sitting U.S. president, a duly elected president of these United States, and utilizing your power in the intelligence community to target him. And by the way, he is still being targeted. Just listen to my last podcast with Lee Smith and just watch what's happening in the news and how desperate these people are in Washington, D.C., these swamp creatures, to keep him from becoming president again. So we're getting there. So he wants, Marxist ideologies, I'm good with that, check that block, and a naval blockade to target drug smugglers. Okay, I don't know if he's going to do a whole naval blockade, but that I think is a pretty good idea because they do that now. The Coast Guard works quite well, even with our partners in Central America. I was in Guatemala and I was with the Guatemalan their top SEAL team. And I was out there on their Boston whalers, right? I brought Jenny Terre with me. Jenny Terre is now with the Daily Caller. She's doing great work there on immigration. But I had her with me on one of those trips. And we were out on the Boston whalers with the Guatemalan SEALs, they're Navy SEALs, and they talked to us about how they work very closely with our Coast Guard and with our Navy in an effort to stop these drug traffickers, to stop the semi-submersible submarines that the cartels are purchasing. By the way, I went in one of those. It is gross. Those semi-submersibles, they work, but it's very little space. They usually shove like 3 smugglers in there. They have to go to the bathroom and they're in a bucket and, toss it out. And they're moving across like the open seas filled with like cocaine or fentanyl or whatever's going on inside that semi-submersible submarine. But I want you to think about how many billions, hundreds of billions of dollars these drug cartels have and the capabilities of these cartels so that they can purchase and make semi-submersible submarines, that they can intercept our law enforcement and our military communication systems. This isn't like little gangs, guys, operating like in our neighborhood, which are bad enough, carrying weapons and just randomly shooting. These are organizations that have literally taken over a government and governments and have embedded themselves so deeply. They've woven themselves into the fabric of these governments to the point where these governments have become pseudo-narco states. They need our help. We need their help to stop it. So yes, naval blockades to target drug smugglers is perfectly fine and reasonable. We're dealing with, organizations that have built pseudo armies, like I said, with semi-submersibles and weapon systems and communication systems that rival and sometimes supersede our own, and especially our law enforcement officers who are on the front lines, who don't even have the support of this Biden administration, who are out there doing the job every single day. And instead, they're being the ones targeted, not the people that are illegally crossing into our country. And by the way, people who have put their children's lives in danger. Need I remind you how many children have lost their lives on this quest, this illegal quest to come to the United States with the aid of human smugglers and drug cartels? Do I need to remind anybody? And I'm sure, for you, you're my listeners. I know you get this. But there might be someone out there who doesn't know the truth. They watch MSNBC, they watch, the brief segments on CBS or ABC. They're not really down there. They don't really see it. They don't really see it. I was talking to someone the other day, and they said that one of their close friends was actually studying law. And at their law school, they were going to the border, but to the ports of entry, and that they were actually being, working as kind of pseudo lawyers for people that were coming into the United States, kind of giving them background on how to apply for asylum, how to do this, how to do that. They came back home and they said, there's not a problem at the border. I was just down there, to their friend who knows there's a problem at the border because they live here in Texas. I was just down there and I was helping immigrants with their paperwork at the ports of entry. Well, that's at the POE. That's at the port of entry. And by the way, helping people who are not actually telling the full truth, many of them, about why they're coming. And I know this from adjudicators, immigration and customs enforcement officers and adjudicators who have had to adjudicate people into the United States. When the lawyers go down there to help with these nonprofit groups, they're basically teaching the immigrant what they need to do to stay, which is basically if they don't really have a good asylum story, they give them one. So they basically teach them to lie so that they can stay in the States. They give them the little loopholes that help them stay here. But that is far different than the wide open border, right? So not only does our immigration policy fail us in many respects, we see that. Look at the overwhelmed court systems. Look at the processing center in Kansas City, Missouri. It's backed up. Good people that are trying to get into this country who have applied the right way are waiting years, some decades, to try to get into the United States. And that's been going on for a long time. That has been going on since I started covering immigration way back when, 2003, 2004, at the Daily Bulletin in California, where I broke a number of stories on this system and this failed system. So absolutely, it needs to be revamped. Absolutely, President Trump has every intention, I believe, and every right to look at this system. Because what is the job of the commander-in-chief? The job of the commander-in-chief of our nation is to protect us from foreign enemies and those inside our country. It is his job to protect the national security of our country. Let's remember the opening. Would you just open the doors to your home? Take out your ADT. Trust that everybody in your area is a good person and that if they walk into your house, they're only coming to get a piece of bread and drink some water. that they're not going to attack your children, that they're not going to come into your house with narcotics, that they're not going to mess up your house, that they're going to replace the goods that they took. Which is the reason why I wrote the book, the brave book, The Amazing Club Awesome Sauce, about border security and immigration, about teaching our children to protect what they love so much, to protect their club, to make it open to everyone, but to ensure that there are rules and regulations put in place that everybody is willing and able to follow to make that place a better place. Not to just open it up and to let anybody in. The cartels are smuggling drugs. They are taking children's organs out of their bodies. They're harvesting organs. What kind of people are we? What have we become that we think like if we ignore that problem, it will just go away? It will not go away. It will never go away if we don't stand up and make sure it goes away. And that means putting people into office that actually have common sense, putting people into office that are willing to fight till the bitter end to protect you and your children. I just want you to think about that. If you look at the array of candidates on the GOP and the Democratic side, when you close your eyes and think about it, who would you trust to protect you and your family? Who would you trust to protect your home, your nation? And by the way, closing off those borders from the drug cartels and the human traffickers and the government officials who are on the take. Yeah, because you know what? Those hundreds of billions of dollars that the drug cartels and human traffickers make go to pay off lawmakers, police, border patrol agents sometimes, Mexican federales, Mexican officials, immigration and customs enforcement officers could be in that pile. This is a very serious problem that our government, has allowed to go out of hand. It is so far out of hand that we don't even know how to control it anymore. Our border patrol, our agents need help. The children being trafficked into our country and being sold into slavery and prostitution need help. Our children who are suffering every day from addiction and depression and sadness, and they feel as though their world is crumbling on them because they feel that no one cares enough about them to stop this, need help. Where do our children go? I love these asylum claims, right? I have to flee the gang members in Honduras or San Salvador. By the way, El Salvador now is a beautiful place. Thank you, President Bukele. What a beautiful country now. He just took them all into custody, threw them in jail. He's like, I'm done. I'm done, MS-13. I'm done with you making life impossible for my people, for the people of El Salvador to live. I'm done. I'm just throwing you in jail. But where do our children go? What asylum officer exists for them outside of our nation? Because, by the way, shootings in Chicago, it's like a war zone there. Every weekend, 67 people shot, 47 people shot, 120 people shot. I don't know. It's just like every weekend. Baltimore, drug sales, prostitution, children being sold. Kensington, people dying all over the streets of fentanyl, walking around like zombies. Oakland, you can't even leave your car locked with a box in it because somebody's going to bust down the window. DAs, district attorneys all across our country put in place by Soros. If you did not see Lee Smith's podcast with me, the last one just before this, after this, you need to take a moment to listen to that. George Soros attorneys being put in place all across America for soft on crime, let our cities crumble and implode on themselves. But where do we go? Where do we go? Where do our children go? Can they apply for asylum in France? Can they apply for asylum in Canada, in Germany? Can they say, oh, my country, the United States of America, is falling apart because of our lawmakers and because of influencers and people like George Soros and others who are making our lives a living hell? Can we apply for asylum in your nation and get out of America? Because my city is a war zone. I mean, that's what these other kids are telling us, right? And people who are coming here. Folks, there is only one United States of America. If we don't protect it, there will be no place left in the world to go. I want to talk to you a little bit about another part of President Trump's plan, which I think is vitally important. And I want you to remember this. I lived in the Middle East most of my childhood. I spent my childhood in Saudi Arabia. I've traveled most of the Middle East. I have many friends in the Middle East, many who are Muslim. I helped one of my closest friends, and I'm still, God help us, trying to get some out of Afghanistan and out of that region. So this has nothing to do with not loving my fellow human beings who stood, by the way, by my side and my husband's side in the war. I'm going to talk to you about how this author and, how Axios interpreted this breaking story of theirs. Trump would expand a Muslim ban, an idea to block more people from certain countries from entering the United States. As president, he banned immigration from more than a dozen countries that are mostly Muslim or in Africa. President Biden rescinded. He rescinded that executive order. You could see what's happening now. Obama created this list. I want you to remember this ban was actually created by Obama. And in fact, I think I was one of the first reporters to actually report on that. And I was also one of the first reporters to report on, the targeted, by the way, drone strikes, the people that Obama and John Brennan were targeting in Muslim countries when I was at the Washington Times. So I want you to listen to this. The reason why President Trump is right in saying certain countries we have to ban these entry points. I mean, of course, each individual person, that's different. You're dealing with complicated issues there because the person may have been from Syria, but then lived in like Brazil, let's say for 10 years. But we still have to look at it and the full scope of like immigration investigation. And those investigators, as they're looking at the background of this person, they still have to, of course, assess whether this person has ever been in an Interpol database, whether this person had any connections to terrorism. But the reason why certain countries are banned from entering and why President Trump did that is because they do not have working governments, folks. They do not have working governments. When you go to a place like Syria, even with Bashar al-Assad in power, those governments don't have systems in place that we can rely on. When you think about other places in the world where systems have collapsed, like Afghanistan, and other places in the world where they have high levels of terrorism or people connected to terrorism, if you go to Mali, if you go to other parts of Africa, that becomes a potentially dangerous problem. So dangerous that if we just open, like we have, our border for the last 5 years, and we've seen how many people at the border have been apprehended with links to terrorism. Imagine how many more have actually entered our country in the known Gottaways, right? We don't know who they are. They're obviously somewhere in our country. And known Gottaways means we know they came in. We don't know who they are, but they're somewhere lost in the system. I think there's over 1.5 million. So imagine that. What would that be like? What is that like when our FBI and our intelligence officials in the country, whether that be DEA and others, I think there's 16 intelligence agencies in the United States, when they try to assess what the threat level is in our country, because we've left the border wide open and there could be potential sleeper cells here or people willing to do something far worse than we saw on September 11th. A dirty bomb, for example, in one of our cities. Who is going to say sorry to you when your children are killed, when your loved ones are killed, all because they were just shopping in the mall that day and some jerk in our government left the borders so wide open? And I have other words I would use for that person, not just jerk is very weak. It's a very weak word. But just in case your children are listening, I've decided to not use abusive language. Because somebody left our border wide open so that these monsters could come in and do our nation harm. Who's going to say sorry to the angel families? Preventable deaths, right? Preventable. By following a law. By focusing on the national security of our nation. By doing our best to protect our families. That is the reason we pay for a president, for the executive branch. We ask that person to please protect our families, to please be vigilant. They are the executive branch. They are the commander-in-chief, the top dog in our military. You have to ask yourself, who do you trust? Why not designate the cartels as unlawful enemy combatants and allow the U.S. military to target them in Mexico? President Trump is 100% right. I testified in Ohio with Derek Maltz, with Heidi Riggs, that we should designate the most affluent, the top organizations in Mexico and around the globe, the top drug cartel organizations, we should designate them terrorist organizations. They kill more Americans than anyone. They run a pseudo-narco state. They have weapons beyond our imagination, and they are willing to transport terrorists into our nation for the right price. And by the way, weapons grade things as well. Whether it's, I don't even want to say what I think that they would be willing to do. No, I would. I'm going to say it. You know what? They would be willing to transport anything into our country for the right price, and they wouldn't even care what it was. They may not even look inside the cargo containers if it's the right price. They do not care about this country. They only care about their power. So why not? Unlawful enemy combatants. That's why I've joined Border 911. It's a 501c3 and a 501c4 that is going to focus on these issues and assist whoever becomes president, and hopefully that's on the GOP side, in formulating a plan that will put the drug cartels on call, that will end their reign, that will stop Sinaloa, Los Zetas, Nueva Generación, any of the main players, that will send a message directly to them. We're not just going to cut the head off the snake. We're not just going to look for the next Chapo Guzman. We are going to destroy your organization from the inside out. And we are going to target you no matter what. Because we did that with Pablo Escobar. And that worked in Colombia. We did that with Pablo Escobar, folks. We can do this again. We do not need to be living in fear. We need to stand up. We need to take our power and seize it back. And we need to say no to these criminals. We need to let them know that we are going to fight back. Why are we acting so weak? Why is the Biden administration leaving the border wide open? What is wrong with these people? And they're doing this knowingly. They want this. So we basically have people in office that we voted for, somebody voted for, put in office that want to see the end of our nation as it is. They are looking at the utter destruction of our nation. And believe me, that is absolutely the truth. We're seeing it. It's right in our face. Admit it. Don't walk away from it. Look at what they're doing. Look at their actions. All you have to do is see their actions to know what the truth is. Don't listen to their serpent tongue. Don't listen to their fake lies. Look at what they are doing and then ask yourself if it's okay. Trump would also quickly deport migrant gang members, smugglers, and other criminals using an obscure section of the 1798 Alien and Sedition Acts. Yes, very good. Complete his border wall, Trump spent billions to put 452 miles of new fencing along the 1,954-mile southern border, porous border with Mexico. Biden halted that project, and I was out there on the border watching the fences and the equipment rot in the searing sun. I watched as it was just pillaged by other companies. I watched as the billions of dollars that were supposed to be used to pay for construction workers were just going out in checks, and no one was even building a thing. That was President Biden's fault. That was not Trump's fault whatsoever. People, we have a lot of thinking to do. You and me together, you have that power. You have it. We can't do it alone. We need you. You know, our country needs you. Absolutely needs you. Everybody is a warrior in this battle. You know, when my husband was overseas and he was on the battlefield, I remember one time I was talking to him, and he was in Afghanistan, and I think I was getting ready to head out, and we were chatting on a secure communication, and I was saying to him, you know, everybody talks about World War II as being the greatest generation, and he said, you know, that's not true. He said, I'm out here every single day with young soldiers that are willing to put everything on the line. They may like video games, they may be millennials, they may be whatever anybody wants to call them, but they love their country. And they're out here in the worst conditions doing everything they can to fight for their country and to get back home alive. And many of them don't come back home alive, and many of them come back wounded, like my husband did. He said, this is a great generation. Well, we're being called upon now to be a great generation. We are watching our country and our country's foundation break at its core. And we have to bond it back together, you and I. And we can't get lazy, and we can't give up, and we can't throw our hands up in the air and give everything back. We just can't do that. Too many people have sacrificed too much for us to be so weak that we walk away from it. I don't know what it's going to take. Maybe just, like I said, an hour a day of your time, volunteering, when it comes to election time, spending time talking to people in your community, organizing, getting together, realizing that this is awesome. We are our own army. We are here to protect our Constitution and our children's future. Do not give it away. Put someone in office that is going to fight for you. Don't pay attention to these media hacks, a lot of them who really have no idea what it's like to be you. You know what you are seeing in your own communities. I don't care if you're white, black, you're from Philippines, you're from Cambodia, or you're Cuban like my mom was, or wherever you're from, you're here, your immigrant family came from Honduras or Mexico or wherever. You know what your community is like. You know what your children are facing. And then ask yourself, why does border security matter to you? Why does the next president matter to you? Who will you put in office? Who do you want to protect you, your family, your home? And if the person that you're looking at wants you to leave your doors wide open to every possible scenario and doesn't even care to allow you to protect yourself and your family, and gives more protection to the criminals and those that are breaking the law, then you need to think twice about who you and why you want them in office. You need to take a little look inside yourself. If you love today's show and want even more of the Sara Carter Show, make sure you rate this podcast 5 stars and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. I want you to follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless our children. And God bless the great state of Texas.